Swamp Thing, he is amazing! And since his debut in 1974, he's been one of the most fascinating characters in the entire DC Comics lineup. From his origins as a straightforward manta monster to his strange luck on the screen, he is what you might not know about DC's resident mug monster. Convergent Evolution. While he would definitely go on to become the most famous, Swamp Thing is by no means the first swamp monster in comics. In fact, he's not even the first one created in the early 70s at one of the major superhero publishers. That honor in particular goes to Marvel's Man-Thing, created by Roy Thomas, Jerry Conway, and Gray Morrow in the pages of Savage Tales Issue 1. In that story, Dr. Ted Sallis is working in the swamp on a formula meant to give people superpowers when he's attacked by criminals and gets exposed to it himself, plunging into the swamp and emerging as Man-Thing. It was only months later that Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson introduced their new swamp monster in the pages of House of Secrets issue 92. In that story, Dr. Alex Olson, later changed to Alec Holland, is working in the swamp on a formula meant to give people superpowers when he's attacked by criminals and gets exposed to it himself, plunging into the swamp and emerging as Swamp Thing. Do I just get deja vu? Needless to say, Conway noticed the similarities between Man-Thing and Swamp Thing, which were especially apparent since he and Wein were actually roommates in New York at the time. The Green. In 1986, Swamp Thing became something more than just a monster. Instead, he was the latest in a long line of plant elementals who were connected to what was called the Green, a mystical field encompassing all of Earth's plant life. From there, Swamp Thing was connected to other plant monsters. DC characters like the Floronic Man, Black Orchid, Solomon Grundy, and even Poison Ivy were added to that connection, but it went beyond just their pages. Another elemental that we get an explicit backstory for shares a suspiciously similar origin with a Golden Age swamp monster called the Heap, and a reference to the repeated pattern of origin stories is pretty easy to read as an acknowledgement of Man-Thing too. The Red, the Clear, and the Rot. Connecting Swamp Thing to the Green gave DC an idea that's been extended to a whole lot of other characters, complete with their own rainbow of colors. Animal Man had a head start. The idea behind this forgotten hero had always been that he could access the abilities of animals by tapping into a morphogenic field, which later became known as the Red. It didn't stop there either. Aquaman's ability to talk to fish was explained as the ability to tap into the watery force called the Clear. And the same story that tied Animal Man to the Red also introduced the Death Force, known as the Rot, which was pretty much bad news for everyone. Love in the Time of Dendrophilia. In the beginning, Alec Holland was mourning both his own status as an undead muck monster and the death of his wife Linda, who perished during his fiery origin. Meanwhile, the human perspective on his adventures fell to Abigail Arcane, niece of the depraved supervillain Anton Arcane, and her boyfriend Matt Cable. Unfortunately for her, Matt was killed, and in one of the most horrifying moments of the series, it was revealed that Anton had been possessing Matt's body without Abby knowing. Once that was taken care of and Anton was sent straight to hell, the way was clear for Swamp Thing and Abby to fall in love with each other. This sparked one of DC's most enduring romances, which is kind of surprising that one of the lovers in question was a shambling monster made of trees. He beat Batman. You might find this hard to believe, but it turns out that in some states it's actually illegal to, how should we say this? Wait, I got this. Bump uglies with a swamp monster. Get it? Ugly? Monster? Anyway. When the locals discovered that Abby Arcane was engaging in dendrophilia, she was arrested, and Swamp Thing wasn't happy. He launched an all-out attack on the city that was holding her, a little place called Gotham. Needless to say, Batman didn't appreciate having his hometown turned into a jungle. While he did his level best to fight the Swamp Thing off, he found out that an avatar of the Green isn't as easy to take down as, say, the Riddler. Instead, Swampy just kept coming back bigger and tougher, until Batman finally saw his point. The Dark Knight figured that if you're going to arrest non-human heroes for having romantic relationships with human women, you're eventually going to have to try slapping handcuffs on Lois Lane and Superman. Reefer Madness. Sometimes it can pay to have a friend with absolute mastery over plants. In Hellblazer issue 63, he got an invite to John Constantine's 40th birthday party, which came as a surprise since the characters had never exactly been pals. Even so, Swamp Thing gave Constantine a birthday present by rapidly growing a single marijuana leaf into enough for everyone, communing with the Green indeed. Swamp to the Future. When Rick Veitch took over the Swamp Thing in 1987, he launched one of the most memorable stories on the book ever, a time travel epic that saw Swamp Thing hurled back through the ages, encountering heroes and villains from throughout DC Comics history. And then he abruptly left the book in mid-story. The reason was no secret and was even the topic of discussion in the book's letters pages for several months. DC asked Veitch at the last minute to change the end of his storyline and he refused. The reason? Rick Veitch's original plan had been for Swamp Thing's next stop to land him in the Roman Empire circa 30 33 AD, where he'd meet an obscure character called Golden Gladiator. Oh, and he was going to team up with Jesus. Only a few years later, it's unlikely that this story would have been a problem. By 1995, DC's Vertigo imprint was publishing Preacher, a book that made Swamp Thing meets Jesus look like a Sunday school lesson. At the time though, Swamp Thing was still firmly set in the DC universe. To this day, his version of Swamp Thing issue 88 remains unpublished. Swamp Thing conquers the screen, sort of. With critically acclaimed stories and a dedicated fanbase, it makes sense that Warner Brothers would bring Swamp Thing to the big screen. The first attempt came in 1982 from Wes Craven, the legendary horror director who went on to direct The Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream. It stuck to Ween and Wrightson's origin story, pitting Alec Holland against Anton Arcane, with Adrienne Barbeau as a love interest. It wasn't exactly a success, but it garnered generally positive reviews. 1988's return of Swamp Thing wasn't so lucky. With a low budget and a bad script, it flopped hard at the box office. It did, however, pave the way for not one but two television shows. In 1990, Dick Durock returned to Swamp Thing for a series that ran for 3 seasons on USA. In 1991, things got even weirder when Fox Kids got in on the action and launched a Swamp Thing animated series. That one only lasted 5 episodes before it got axed, but it did give the world the gift of an incredibly weird theme song.
Swamp Thing. You are amazing.
Thanks for watching. Click the looper icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus, check out all this cool stuff you know you'll love too.